A Bangladesh court sentenced ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to death this morning after she was found guilty of committing crimes against humanity. The charges stemmed from Hasina's involvement in ordering a deadly crackdown on a student-led uprising last year. Some 1,400 people were killed in the suppression of the mass protests. Bangladesh's Domestic War Crimes Court, the International Crimes Tribunal, delivered the verdict in absentia this morning. Ahead of the verdict, Hasina dismissed the accusations, calling into question the fairness of the proceedings and saying that a guilty verdict was a foregone conclusion. For the latest on this, we're now joined by the CBC's South Asia correspondent, Salima Shivji, live in Mumbai this morning. Salima, what more can you tell us about this verdict and what's the reaction you're seeing and hearing so far?
Well, the tribunal did take a couple of hours to read out this very long verdict, which was more than 450 pages long. Basically, they took pains to detail exactly what happened in those violent student protests in July of 2024, and really going through what Sheikh Hasina, the ousted prime minister, is accused of, namely inciting violence as well as ordering troops to fire and basically sanctioning the use of lethal force against protesters. And then after all of that time detailing what exactly happened and reading out this verdict, the sentence was announced. Take a listen.
For all these 3 counts, we have decided to inflict her with only one sentence, that is sentence of death.
Now, you can hear those very loud cheers inside that courtroom. There were cheers outside as well, where security forces in full protective gear were outside. The security situation really quite tight outside the building. There were also cheers where student demonstrators were gathered outside the former family home of Sheikh Hasina. They were poised there with a bulldozer, threatening to tear down that family home. So there were cheers there as well. Of course, this case is very emotional, with so many people, up to 1,400 people killed, according to a United Nations report, in those demonstrations, as well as thousands more injured, namely from gunfire from security forces. So this case is obviously extremely emotional in the country. Sheikh Hasina was tried in absentia, as well as her interior minister. Neither were in the country to hear their death sentence pronounced against them. The only person actually in court, one of the 3 accused, was the former police chief. Now, Hasina has released a statement. She has called the death sentence against her biased and politically motivated. And she goes on to write, "I am not afraid to face my accusers in a proper tribunal where evidence can be weighed and tested fairly." Her response very much in line in what she has said consistently as these proceedings were taking place. She has repeatedly called these proceedings politically motivated.
So, Salima, now that we have the verdict and, of course, now the sentence, what is the timeline as for what happens next?
Well, there is a lot of uncertainty because, of course, Bangladesh is facing an election in about 3 months, in early February. We also know that it appears with a death sentence and a verdict that is so clear in this case, the chances that Sheikh Hasina will mount any sort of political comeback are really quite slim, even though her party, the Awami League, does still have supporters in the country as well as outside the country. But what is not clear, actually, is whether she will actually face justice. She is still living in India in exile, and repeated requests from Dhaka for New Delhi to extradite Hasina have gone unanswered by New Delhi. So she is still in India, and it is unclear what New Delhi will do now, particularly since Hasina has very put the focus on the fact that she believes that these proceedings were politically motivated. So we do not know what will happen next, but it is clear that there will be an election sometime soon. There's a fair bit of uncertainty still in the country as these emotional proceedings wrap up.
The CBC's Salima Shivji in Mumbai. Thanks, Salima.